Henry C. Trost built everywhere from Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, Kansas, and Colorado, also in Mexico. In El Paso, anywhere from 150 to 200. We're constantly discovering new buildings every day.
And what distinguishes Trost is that he was capable of designing in every single style imaginable. I often compare him to the Beatles' White Album. 1968, the Beatles produced a two-record album set, the White Album, and they showed off their ability to produce music in every single conceivable style. And so Helter Skelter's a punk song, Rocky Raccoon is a folk song, they're ballads, there's a surfer song back in the USSR, and they were showing off their capacity of producing everything you could think of, jazz. Henry C. Trost did that with El Paso. He produced a building in every single genre and style you can imagine, and others that you can't even imagine. And his idea was really unique in the history of American architecture. It was to create a city that would showcase his architecture. Each building is part of a larger artwork, which is the city of El Paso. There is no city in America, probably there is no city in the world, in which one single architectural firm made such a deep and permanent impression. There's no other place like this in the world.
And I remember taking a tour of downtown and looking around, and we stopped in front of the staged National Bank building, which was designed by Trost, and it's a Italian Renaissance style. And I was so taken with that building that I thought, you know what, there's amazing architecture here. And the more research I did, the more I realized that the amazing architecture we have here, the majority of it was built by Henry Trost. And that fire slightly damaged the Trost building that was next to it, and instead of really looking at whether they could save that building, they opted to demolish it. And then there was also, just on the corner of San Jacinto Plaza, there was a building that had been covered by a facade. It was the John T. Muir building. And underneath that facade, there was a really beautiful, it was sort of this veneer that had covered up this really beautiful facade. And they said, there's nothing underneath, there's nothing architecturally significant about this building. And then lo and behold, when the wrecking crews came in, they removed that veneer, and the facade was still intact underneath. And they had to spend a lot of money demolishing that building because the building was meant to stand. And that was the Trost building.
Really good job. I was really sad when they knocked down one of the old bank buildings where they had a building that burned right next door. And that building was fine, and they still knocked it down. And I was like, no. And it's beautiful. It had like these beautiful pillars, and it was also from Trost, so they had some really good building. So that's when I get sad, when they knock down, they don't fix it.
In the early part of the 20th century, there was this big emphasis on making buildings as efficient as possible in terms of light and air. And the materials that were used were of such a high quality that to try to replicate that would be economically unsound. Now, in the O.T. Bassett Tower building, which was built by Trost in 1930, there's now an A-loft hotel. The building behind me, which is the Anson Mills building, it's all offices. Many of them are filled. They restored the building in 2012. It took a little while for that to take off, but now you've got this really excellent restaurant. You've got the Chase Bank downstairs. You've got a Starbucks, a TCBY. People are constantly using that building. And so, they're really starting to see that pay off. They're now restoring the Plaza Hotel, which was also built in 1930, and that building. And the point is to try and spur restoration of some of these buildings instead of having them be demolished for something new or for a parking lot, which is what we saw.